All right, we're live. So, welcome everybody to the first, technically second podcast that we have done. I'm here with
Yes, that is
Broccoli.
true. That is true.
We recorded one before and it was really bad. So here we are for number two. And
We talk too much.
yeah, so if for those of you who are not in the know or don't know me or haven't watched haven't been watching super close in my videos, Broccoli is was my roamer on my sixes team previously. But this past season, he actually played demo man for me on my engineer sixes team, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And then where I played engineer full time instead of flank scout. But he's also a demo man in Highlander, but also makes some YouTube videos. And most recently, he made the video on how to play roamer. So obviously, kind of a big deal. Twitch.tv/Scary
Yeah, pretty
Broccoli.
much.
Yeah.
Pretty much a
So
big deal.
yeah. Anything else you'd like to say about yourself?
um, Honestly, no. My career is pretty much over since you uploaded the broccoli exposed video. So,
Oh, that's the on the second channel, so no one's gonna watch that.
okay, never mind. Well,
So.
I'm living out in a cardboard box because of that video. So,
Okay. So the first topic I wanted to talk about was actually the new case, because it's not like brand new at this point. It's been out for 2 weeks, and I think at this point, like, people can start to get their thoughts about it. Because I think when it first came out, people immediately were like super positive, because the last case that we got with because the last case that we got with the winter case, honestly, like some of the like most of the cosmetics were either like okay to like really bad, and then but we haven't really had like a case that has been good in a while. And most of the cosmetics in this case are actually good rather than being okay to bad. Like, we for the past couple of years, all we get are the summer case, which in the past like 2 years has been okay, and then the Halloween case, which is super egregious shit that Valve lets us wear all year round now for some reason. And then we have the winter case where it's like, fucking Christmas trees and stuff everywhere. And I think now that we got something that like people actually like, cosmetics that people will actually use for more than, like 3 months, I think the feedback was like super positive. Um,
I would agree. I mean, I think that Valve, and it's no secret to anybody who's played this game for a long time now, that Valve TF2, Valve has a tendency to neglect its games, but TF2 is the most neglected of all of them. And I think a lot of the things that they've been putting in the crates recently have been embarrassing. Just to kind of be frank with you, like the whole, what was it called? That one, the corpse carrier. That was an embarrassment, I think, to Valve, even more so than the bots are still the biggest embarrassment, but holy crap, not having the corpse carrier be Halloween restricted was kind of egregious to me. I'm not sure if you remember that whole fiasco.
it was well, I had a little bit of a different perspective on it actually than I would say most people did, because most people I think thought it was either really stupid, because there was like three camps of people. Um, there was one where it was like you thought this was really dumb, and why would you add a second body to a character? And
Yeah.
a lot of those people who thought that way were sniper mains, and I do not blame them for being mad, if I'm being honest. And then after that, you had the people who was like, haha, this is really funny. And like, TF2 sex update, right?
Hmm.
And then there was the third group of people who were like, this should not be like, where the people who are like fucking dying the past couple years, and I'm kind of one of these people where it's just like the TF2 art style got progressive, like in terms of like being more general. I would say like 20, like the first like two cases, like yes, the potassium bonnet was like super like against TF2's art style, but like it's developed over the years. But like this is like the death. Like there were like, I know Funk made that video a while ago, but like nothing
Yeah,
has
that was
been
a
like
while back.
super egregious up until the past couple years with like,
Yeah,
because
and I mean, I think a part of that is it's kind of like a creep in a card game, but instead it's for TF2. Like you need to continue creating, or I mean, I should use creating lightly because Valve doesn't actually make them; they just pull them straight from the community market. But you need to continue putting out content that people want to buy crates and keys for in order to potentially get that item. Because if you make stuff that isn't exciting anymore, there's already so many hats to choose from. I feel like it has less of an appeal. And with the corpse carrier too, Valve was probably raking in the dough from that because people were selling it for really expensive
Yeah, because they
because of how
changed it.
broken it was. And I
That
mean,
too.
again, I don't think Valve cares all that much about the money that it earns from TF2 because let's be honest, they have better sources of money nowadays, and that's probably one of the reasons why TF2 has been so ignored is because they don't really need it anymore. But and again, that's not a good justification for why they do it. I just think it's kind of part of the reason.
Yeah,
But I think you need to make the cases become more and more ridiculous, and it does work with TF2 whether you like it or not, because TF2 is just a goofy game. But you need to kind of have that creep in order to keep people entertained to an extent.
yeah. The weird perspective that I have is that, so for those of you who don't know, in competitive TF2 there are whitelists, which you'll see a lot of conversations about, especially from me, where there are weapons that are banned or unbanned. So, like, for example, the Cow Mangler is banned in sixes, but is not banned in Highlander. And the Airstrike is banned in Highlander, but not in six. And then you have it from like region to region, where in North America in RGL, the Market Gardener is like free to use. You can use it in sixes, but it is banned in Europe in E2F2L. But there are also cosmetics that can get banned for
Well, you can't
various
even have any
reasons.
Halloween mode, by the way. Halloween is just
Halloween is
completely disabled. You
actually
can't.
in RGL it is enabled actually.
Really? You can
Yeah,
have Halloween? What? I didn't
yeah.
know that. Okay.
So but and I know that it does not, or at least unless they changed it in like the last like 6 months, you when Scream Fortress comes around, it automatically like it'll trigger on the RGL servers because I've seen people use like Halloween restricted cosmetics. Um, but the thing is that in so like certain cosmetics can get banned, but usually it's because of like spy and whatever, and kind of like it doesn't really matter. But on day one, the day that the corpse carrier was added, like immediately, like the staff Discord was just on fire because it was
Yeah.
like,
So how did it work,
and
by the way? Was the hitbox the top head, right?
yeah, I
Okay.
do not
It's just really
remember. I
this is
honestly
really
don't remember.
distracting.
Yeah,
It makes it so hard to it just looks like the
yeah,
hitbox
it
is different
was
than it is.
the thing was is it was probably one of the most unanimous like
Votes ever, probably.
cosmetic bans I've ever
Yeah.
seen. Because most people, because like if we go back and talk like booty time, where it just like you make like the jingle sound, there's gonna be an argument because it's like, oh well, spy is nerfed, but the other conversation is like, yeah, but you have situational awareness where that scout is at all times, so like it's give and a take. But with this, it was like this for every sniper player in the entire game, even if you think that the second head is that head for like half a second, that's still half a second you could have headshot the other player.
Yeah.
So like
It's kinda
it was really egregious.
and I don't even like Sniper, by the way. I think Sniper is not fun to play against,
At
but
JJ.
it's not fair for Sniper players to have to put up with that. And I think I mean we're getting a little off topic here, but I will shout out too, and I'm guessing that you know the answer to this of whether or not there's a couple of pyro cosmetics, and I could not remember them for the life. There's like the clown pants, and there's like the fishing jacket
Yes,
that
yeah, I know.
like the other team, and
Yes,
those
yeah,
are
I know.
banned too,
I
right?
put it,
For sure.
no, they're not actually. Because
What? Okay, that's ridiculous.
I put that in the Xylophone Discord where because I played against a pyro who was dressed up all like that. I
Oh my
thought he
god.
was on the opposite team multiple times. Like, because he was
Yep.
on the other team at first, and I thought he was on my team, and I was like, fuck. And then he got auto balanced, or I got auto balanced, or something. And then I was on his team, and I kept thinking he was an enemy, and I was like shooting like rockets at him, and it just did nothing, and I was like, fuck. I thought he was like air blasting or something or
Yep.
whatever, But no, he was just my fucking teammate, and so, but yeah,
Things like that are what Valve should avoid adding. Like I think it's
well,
fine to add goofy cosmetics, but things like that, or at least they need to change that. That should not be paintable like that. That's just
it's not
ridiculous.
just that. I think the issue is that a similar color to Slate, which is a blue paint, should not
It's
exist.
available on Red Team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just shouldn't exist. It should be retired. Like, I know it's weird to say that we should retire a paint because it's just a tool that's been around for like what feels like forever. But like we've retired unusuals like entirely, like the energy orb on like
Energy Orb
weapon.
is one.
Yeah. So like we can retire, like I think that paint should just be retired. And then but there's no paint that is like red. I guess you could technically say like Manco orange, but I don't think and like cream spirit like the orange colors, but I don't think those are nearly as bad as literally being like blue. Like just like it blends in blue with the blue team. Like that's
But
not fair.
as I'm really glad that Valve this I hope that the crates continue to look like the ones that we just got because
I agree.
there were as far as I know there are no glaring issues with any of that stuff like hitboxes, paintable. I don't think any of this stuff is going to get banned.
No,
I think the unusuals are okay.
yeah, there's only a few that I enjoy, but I think
Yeah, but
most of them aren't that great.
sure.
But the one thing that I enjoy about this crate, which is something I have an issue with a lot of cosmetics, which is that very often, I shouldn't say extremely often, but very often, I see cosmetics that are contributed that have paintable regions over areas that normally have team color. Like, for example, I know this is gonna, so like Demo Man, right? So Demo Man has, like, his jacket is like gray, right? Like his bomb vest is like,
Yeah.
is gray. So that being a paintable area is fine. But Demo Man's sleeves are red, and so are his pants. Those areas should never be painted, in my
Mhm.
opinion, because it can annihilate team recognition. So if you're
I think that's
making,
what
go ahead.
makes part of TF2's gameplay so good too with the team recognition is that in other games it can be difficult to tell who's in your team and not.
Yeah.
And the
So
saturated colors make it really easy, and also like the maps are generally not very saturated. So like think of like I don't know Dust Bowl. It's kind
yes,
of brown, upward.
as
It's kind of brown, and it's really easy to see that blue and that red stand out.
yeah,
And it can also be a bad thing, like you said before, and I've experienced the same thing when there's that one freaking pyro with the blue painted cosmetics on red team, and you keep thinking that he's on the other team because it really does screw with you.
yeah, absolutely.
So
And as
I
someone,
agree. I 100% agree that those areas should not be paintable.
yeah,
I think
it,
that's
it
ridiculous.
and it's
And
not something that
so
happens commonly, but when it does happen, it's like that pyro cosmetic where you just literally it's very difficult, or it can't, if you are have to spend more than a second to identify what the other team, like what team the enemy is on, and they're right in front of you, that's just bad. It should not take you more than a split second to realize what they're on. I mean, so
kind of segueing then, I would like to see that those cosmetics and potentially that paint get reworked if Valve were ever to actually update this game outside of bug fixes and crates.
yeah, I think that's more up to the like the content creator, the person who made that. But I think if we could have a
I
conversation about it
suppose. I
where,
think yeah.
yeah, I would also like to say if you have a cosmetic that adds team color to areas that did not have team color, that's absolutely fine. Like for example, the new, like the soldier cosmetic, the new one with like the jacket where it's like a like detective jacket,
Yeah.
that is perfectly fine because it adds blue everywhere. Yes, it clips with a lot of stuff, like everywhere, when you add other cosmetics. However, if you are red or blue, you are the only color you are adding is red or blue, except for like in his like the end of his dress shirt at the very end, which is perfectly fine. So even if you paint it like the other team's color, it's not noticeable. In the you are adding far more team color than you are removing. So,
Mhm.
but yeah,
I
overall,
think
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna kind of segue into talking about updates because I think there are so many things in this game, and actually, I should say with Valve's most recent updates, and you could probably agree, they're heading in the right direction as far as bug fixing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are still so many problems with the game that, yeah, I get it's spaghetti code, but with some TLC could probably be ironed out and make the experience a lot better for people.
Yeah,
So
I wonder how much I don't know. So for anyone who's listening, I know me and Broccoli are both computer science majors, so like
yeah.
programmers. And so like I think Broccoli is actually more experienced in programming than I am at this point because different conversation. But the point is it makes me wonder how much documentation is actually in TF2's code, because it is something, it's like one of the major issues with working on anything really, is just not knowing how someone did something or how something functions, and then
And
you
they
either
don't
need,
leave any comments in the
exactly,
code.
and there's no comments in the code for,
And yeah, and I think, and maybe this is for me saying this is not really for you, Kui, but it's for anybody who's listening who maybe doesn't have any idea what we're talking about, has no experience with programming before. And I'm not going to act like I'm some sort of hotshot programmer because that's not my job, and I'm not really that great at it. But I kind of understand because I know people who are programmers. And when you have something like the Source Engine, which Kui, you could probably tell me, it's probably like what, more than 15 years old.
Yeah.
And that's what TF2 is programmed in, right? Is a Source Engine, you know.
Yeah.
And when you have that, not a lot of people who are new to the jobs, like new to the job at Valve or any company for that matter, are going to be that familiar with it. Like they're not teaching that in schools, right? So you need to learn it, and it's already hard enough to learn a new programming language that's kind of old. And video game development is not easy by any means. And then when you factor in that it's been about 15 years or maybe like 20 years of TF2 actually being in development, so the program was being worked on, that's a lot of different, like not all the same people were working on that code. Like some people moved positions in Valve, some people quit. There were new employees. If those people didn't document what certain parts of the code did, it's going to be a nightmare for somebody who's new or even an experienced programmer to try to figure out what the heck is going on in that block of code. And I think that's why TF2 has so many like, well, that's why the joke is there for like this TF2 spaghetti code, because a project this big that has been around for this long is just bound to have a mess if they didn't do a very good job of taking care of it. And if you are familiar with the creator called Shaunik, you would know that there are comments in the code that are just programmers losing their minds. And I highly recommend watching that video.
Yeah, it's a great video.
It's not only hilarious, but it sheds some light onto how it's like a miracle that TF2 is like held together by glue, like raisins and string.
Yeah, it's yeah. TF2 sometimes I don't know I haven't looked at the source code that was leaked or anything like that. But if I had to imagine it, the source code is probably like Halo 2, which if any of you don't know the source like the code for Halo 2, it is honestly amazing that it like runs, like period, like it runs at all. But it still ran on the original Xbox fucking somehow. But hey, that's sometimes how I feel like it is in TF2, but it probably isn't as bad as I'm expecting. But there are certain things that just cause issues as well with like how like effects are like put onto players. And this has been fixed, but it was just like when before the glitch with like the locust bar and the Gru, where you could get like 9 billion health.
Oh yeah.
Because it would override the like the health back when you put away the Gru after eating the locust bar, and it would just keep giving you health. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to say the least. Some of the spaghetti code, but I think most of
the point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I can't think of anything like any glaring bugs at all actually currently, which is good.
Really?
Yeah. Well, the main ones that were major issues have been fixed. Like recently, the projectile bug, where like it was mostly an issue for medic players, but for soldiers as well, where you would like shoot like a friendly teammate point blank, like with the arrow, for example, and you would shoot them and it would just go through them instead of giving them health. So like that's been a bug for forever, and it's been fixed.
I have a significant bug I can think of for you. The soldier reload glitch. You reload in a rocket, and you should be able to fire it, and then you shoot, and it doesn't shoot. That hasn't been fixed yet. That just recently happened to me. So there's one. I have another one. If you try to join, and this is kind of on mine, then I actually put a video on YouTube to try to explain how to fix it, because I have people who also have the problem and can't find anything online, so it hasn't gotten very many views. But there's a bug where if you try to join somebody's party through your friend list, it won't let you join. And normally, if they decline you, you'll see like the thing to pop up underneath like your party bar that'll say like requesting to join or something along those lines. And if they deny it, it'll disappear. But with this, it doesn't do anything at all. And the way you actually fix it is you open up your console and it'll say like invalid party request to party and then an ID. And then you have to like copy paste something into the console to get it to work. And it's very obscure, but something like that, where it's just like the game coordinator being really weird. And that could be a problem with Steam, I suppose. But there's still plenty of, maybe not major bugs, but bugs that make playing the game kind of janky, if that makes sense. And I would love to see, and this is kind of an unpopular take, I think, but I've always been of the opinion, at least recently, that Valve can, for me, I don't care if they don't add any new weapons to the game. I'd much rather see, obviously, fixing the bots, but that's just a given for like everybody at this point. Fixing the bots, but then also major bug fixes like that make it a smoother experience, and updating the default settings would be nice for new players, and then I suppose the last one would be what was the last one? I can't remember, but I'm sure you have more to add to that.
Yeah, I think for another, if we got like another major update, I wouldn't say that it is an unpopular opinion that we don't want new weapons at this point, to be honest. Because right now, my philosophy is like, because I'm a competitive player, right? And I like Valve's competitive, and this is a whole can of worms that we're just not going to get into. But the point is like, if a weapon is good in casual and isn't broken, but is bad in competitive, that is fine. And if a weapon is good and competitive and bad and casual, but isn't broken, that's fine. As long as it's a weapon isn't a major issue in one of the two categories, then it's perfectly fine. Like for example, a item that is honestly fine but is complained about a lot is like the flog, where the flog is pretty bad most of the time in sixes and in Highlander, to be honest. But
It has
whereas
its uses.
if but casual, yeah, it absolutely has niches in both. Like pushing goalie wash last with flog is actually a good strat, right? In sixes. But the thing is like, yes, it can be extremely strong in like pubs, but the most of the time that I see like the flog like dominating a server is
Because of an
usually
Uber medic
exactly, they're just paired with an Uber
or
medic.
maybe vaccinator,
Yeah, and I think the
and I think
problem
it's
is more of that people don't realize how strong an Uber can be, and then if you pair that in like a flog, like not even just a flog like Uber, but like just a pyro Uber, where your teammate doesn't need to like really track people very well, and most people in casual aren't well, they're not like god gamers, they're not grinding competitive or anything like that, and so when they pick pyro, who's a lot like killing people in an Uber is much easier than like if you're like not a experienced scout, for example, it like the Uber is just going to be stronger. And then obviously you get free crits. Yeah, that's great, but like most of the time, you're usually less effective. And it's like a fine weapon casually. It's not amazing. It's not the fucking best thing ever. And it's not like and it's obviously not garbage. Like it's good, but it's not like broken. And
no, really the only reason that flog is such a menace in casual is because of Uber and the scorch shot. Those are really the two
yes, correct.
things that I think
Yeah.
the scorch shot deserves a rework, and I think the flog would be perfectly fine. And
Yeah.
again, a lot of it is Uber's misunderstanding how much the Uber medic is actually carrying the team as opposed to something like the crits or the vaccinator.
Yeah. Yeah,
For the
absolutely.
quick fix, because again, Uber is hands down by far, and you probably understand why I'm bringing this up, but there is no competition. None of the other mediguns come close to Uber.
Yeah, absolutely.
There will never be a day that 8 seconds of invincibility is going to be outclassed by anything in the game.
Yeah, especially
Like,
casually, where most of the time you're going to be building at maximum rate.
yep,
Because there's just too many people to heal and overheal for that matter. One thing that I see medics very, very underutilized in casual is the power of overheal. You can literally just win games by overhealing your teammates, if I'm
yep,
being honest. Like when I
yep.
start a round of TF2, oh, what I do first is I'll like pick spy just to like subconsciously encourage my teammates to not pick spy. I know that's weird, but like that's
No,
just
it's
what I do.
genius.
But once it hits like 30 seconds, I'll switch to medic, get an Uber, I'll overheal all of my teammates, and I'll go out, take that Uber, and then I go back to spawn and I switch to the class that I actually
Yep.
want to play.
And if you're playing a game like Payload, you can completely snowball by wiping them on first point and then just get in a
Absolutely.
lot of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that I think a lot of the people who've commented on my videos don't fully understand how important overheal is. And I love the overheal mechanic, and I think it's just great. And that's like how you carry teams on medic. I think is uber charge and overheal
Yeah.
and crossbow people who are low.
I
That's how
agree.
it works.
I think it's more that the education really just isn't out there yet. Like the video resources for like higher level like pub play slash like lower level competitive play aren't like out there currently, and they haven't been. They might have been out there previously, but aren't really anymore. Like for example, like Marksman was a guy who used to make competitive TF2 videos, like on how to play certain maps and whatever. But the problem is that his videos, while good at the time, like the last video he made was in like 2014, 2015, and it was for sixes. But in case for those of you who are not listening, the meta has shifted by an enormous margin since then, because like medics can move at the same speed as their like heal
Yep.
target. So like the meta completely changed because now, like, for example, now your pocket soldier is more of a roamer rather than staying by your medic and all that.
Yep.
It's just a whole different like it's a whole different game, and no one has really like gotten into that niche to kind of explain to people. I know Theory Y recently made a video on overheal and stuff, and I watched it. It was actually pretty good. And he's starting to get into competitive TF2, um, into competitive sixes. But I think there's just certain like unwritten things that people don't really know. Like for example, like if you're in a team fight, do not. I know that for anyone who's like listening, you're gonna be like, what? And I'm just gonna say, do not. If you're in a team fight, don't heal your heavy like with the minigun.
Nope.
Just arrow
Bad idea.
him. Just arrow
Yep.
heal if
Highlander heavy does not. You typically do not want to heal the Highlander heavy with your medi beam. You want to arrow him
yep.
because
He's
easy
gonna
target to hit. Burst heals are really good, and then you can. It's more important realistically to put the heals. I'm assuming you're talking about Highlander or Prolander because you've mentioned the heavy.
yep.
But it's more important to put your heals on your scout and your demo because, or your demo
And
and your pyro because they have better mobility and they're harder to hit with arrows.
yeah.
And you also,
And
yeah, you,
it goes for
yeah.
pubs as well, though, where it's just like
Oh,
say you're getting
absolutely.
like because if you say you're queuing with some friends or whatever or anything really, you're just playing casually and there's no comms where you get like a heavy with you and then maybe you're with a soldier or I mean realistically any other class that isn't like so what in the it's like okay except for maybe a spy or sniper but like if you're in like a fight like the three of you you just heal whoever is not the heavy and then arrow the head with your
Exactly.
medigun because you auto reload, right? So you don't need to keep your crossbow out, and which is another thing that I think medics. I think once you've played medic for a bit, you kind of understand to never like you keep the crossbow out and then like insta shoot it, and then you immediately swap back to your medigun,
Exactly.
and then you keep healing, and then you kind of feel like the reload time, and then you go back and you insta shoot it, and then blah blah blah. And you those shooting, you just heal your heavy that way, and then heal your other target. So that way, because yes, the like if you beam just the heavy, he'll probably live, but you can out heal your medigun with the crossbow. And so just keeping your heavy topped off, yeah, he doesn't have overheal. Or if he has overheal, your crossbows aren't going to do anything. So he needs to actually get hurt first. But
Right.
once as you get more experience, you kind of figure that out. Which
It's more useful to overheal your light class players, like a scout or like if you're with a demo or a soldier or a pyro or whatever. It's better to overheal them than the heavy because if the heavy takes 150 damage, okay, you can just arrow him twice and he's full HP again. But if the pyro or the demo or soldier or whatever takes 150 damage and they're not overhealed because you overhealed your heavy instead, they're
gonna
gonna
die.
die to a lot. They're gonna die a lot quicker than the heavy would.
Yeah,
And the heavy
exactly.
can always back up and eat a sandwich if you need to leave.
Yeah, and
So
so
realistically, you don't want to put, and this is like a huge mistake that so many pub medics make, and I'm really glad you brought it up because I know in Meet the Heavy, you're Ubering the heavy, you're healing the heavy a lot, but that's actually heavy is one of the worst heal targets in most cases, honestly, because heavy
well,
is
yeah.
able to win fights himself without an overheal. Like if you're just with the heavy, then yeah, heal him, and especially if you can crit heal heavy to a 4 or
Oh,
50,
it's fat. Yeah,
that's huge. But
yeah,
like you said, Kui, it needs to be in a team fight. If you're air tanking and heavy in a team fight, you're going to be doing much better than if you were only using your beam. And by
yeah.
the way, if you're not using Crusader's crossbow and you're not a free to play, switch to Crusader's crossbow if you care about helping your
Winning.
team the most.
Yeah. And I that's one thing that I was gonna say. Like in an update, there's a lot of things that I would obviously like to see. Like I want to see a new comic. I love SFM. Blah blah blah. There's things that I would like to see, and there's things that I want to see. Like I would love to see like an actual console port. Of TF2, like on like the Xbox and the PlayStation,
Yeah,
so people can actually fucking play it. And I made a video about it actually a while ago, but this was like a year or two ago because one of our friends our old acquaintances is actually like a tier 6 rocket jumper, and he actually recorded for me a like him beating a jump map with a controller because he was actually really good with rocket jumping with a controller. And so but the video was like way too negative, and it was just not something I wanted to release, and so I just scrapped the whole thing. But like these are like things that I want to see, but it's not realistic at all. Because at this point, I think like I want to see rebound. I don't want to see new weapons. I want to see like rebalances, if possible. And besides, and like bug fixes.
I
And
agree.
and besides that, and then the other thing was I don't want to see like super egregious cosmetics anymore because it feels like the last couple years, again tying this into earlier, it feels like they've been adding like a lot of like just all class hats and unusuals just to encourage people to unbox like and try to get unusuals. And then but the hats like
Yeah.
themselves are like not that great, or the all
Which,
class
to be
hats are
honest
not
to
that
me,
great.
I don't fully understand why Valve does that anyways. Because let's be honest, if TF2 completely died right now, Valve wouldn't even
They
notice financially wise. Like
no, absolutely not. No.
I think TF2 is more useful to them as bringing people onto the platform.
I
If I'm
agree.
being honest with you, and and,
I
and that kind of segues into. I'll let you finish what you're saying, but that segues into what I'm.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know one of my best friends from high school. He actually learned how to play like PC gaming. Like he learned how to play like on the keyboard and mouse through playing heavy in TF2. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
he's not the only one. I started PC gaming with Minecraft and TF2, like back in like 2011, 2012, 2013. I think I started Minecraft in like 2011, 2012, but then I started playing TF2 in 2013. And, because I was playing on like a, mouse pad on Minecraft and it didn't really matter. But then I got started to play TF2 and then I had to use a mouse or else I was just going to get wrecked. And so yeah, I mean, I think it was and I think a lot of people's introduction to PC gaming because it's free. It's a free game. It looks
Yep.
fun. It's a
Doesn't you don't need a supercomputer to run it either. I mean, it
exactly.
can just be decent.
You can run it on like nowadays, especially nowadays with like a AMD like APU, like you can run it on nearly basically anything from the last like what 4 or 5 years, as long as it has like actual like non-Intel integrated graphics, and you're good. Like it runs. I mean, it's not well optimized at all. For
Hmm.
those listening, there's a difference between it running easily and it being optimized.
Yeah.
There's a major difference.
Yeah.
But I mean, but it runs decently unless you're like on like a computer from like 2007, which is a video that I wanted to make, but that's besides. You were trying to say something? Sorry, by the way.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about how I think the biggest, and I think I'm not sure how Valve works entirely, and there's a lot of videos about this, and I'm not going to sit here and argue about what Valve does this or whatever, but I think it is no doubt in my head that for Valve, TF2 isn't useful as a money making tool anymore. I'm sure they make money off of it, and I'm sure if you kind of look into numbers and try to figure it out yourself, it's a lot of money. But to a company like Valve, it's nothing. And really, the
Absolutely.
biggest thing that I think Valve needs right now, outside of like Steam continuing to be successful and maintaining users, which I think they're doing a fantastic job of with like
Absolutely.
the Steam Deck,
Yeah.
is getting more people in. Because Epic Games right now is really even if you can get past the terrible launcher, is really pulling in a lot of users because of the free games that they have.
Yeah.
And maybe Valve doesn't want to give out free games as much as they do, but they already have tons of fantastic free games, and one of them is their IP, Team Fortress 2, that they happen to have complete control over. So I think it's really stupid of them to, and I don't know if this is how they think or not, but if they look at it like in a way that a typical corporate board would, they say, well, oh, TF2 is only 10 or a tenth of a percent of our yearly income, therefore we should put it on the side and never worry about it because who cares, right? We don't make money off of it, but they do make money off of it that they don't maybe see right in the numbers.
Yeah.
Because myself, I started, the only reason I would probably still be playing on an Xbox right now if I didn't start watching, like if I didn't get recommended like a Muselk video and start watching Muselk play this game, because Muselk is the reason that I downloaded TF2 on my computer in the first place, and he's the reason that I started playing PC games. And let me tell you, I spent a lot of money on Steam, so Valve has made a lot of money off of me. That is only because of TF2.
So you're saying
So
that
that's kind of
so
my point, is that it's bigger value than what they actually pull in, because if you are gaining users through having free games and those users eventually end up spending money on whether it be TF2 or something else on Steam, that's still money generated by TF2 that might not have been there.
yeah, absolutely. So what you're saying is Muselk should get an affiliate code for Steam and
He should. He should.
affiliate link.
You should come back to TF2 music, please.
Honestly,
Please, we
to
need
to
you
be
in this.
real, because I didn't get into the game. Muselk started. I remember Muselk's Market Gardener montage that he put on that was on Niceult, and that's how he got big initially. Actually, well, I say big with like
Hmm.
quotation. Um, but my buddy Adam, which Adam, he was our medic in the first newcomer. But he got me into TF2 because we were playing Minecraft. He started playing TF2 because Chris, who was our Pocket Scout in season 1, was playing TF2. To my understanding, and he was like, "Hey, you should play with us." And I was like, "Okay," and I started playing, and he badgered me and badgered me and badgered me to watch Jerma and Star, and I was like, nah, all right, I put it off, I put it off, I put it off, and then eventually I fucking watched a Jerma video and a Star, and I was like, okay, this is pretty funny, and I watched a Star video, and I was like, okay, this is great, and I just fucking fell in love with Jerma and Star. I was more of a Star fan myself.
Yep.
But the because I don't know, I just preferred like Jerma's really funny and I love Jerma. He's one of my favorite content creators ever, still to this day. But I always
Yep.
preferred like Star's like kind of more like serious takes on stuff. I always like to hear what he had to like to think or he had to say. Um,
Right.
but like that's kind of how like I think that is how like I kind of got into TF2. But I would say that absolutely Uncle Dane is the reason I started making content on YouTube. Like he absolutely is. Like Funk is great, and there's a lot of content creators that I love, but I would say that Uncle Dane is like the reason I started making content. Like just period. Like his editing is great, and I was like, I right now the issue that I have is like there's not really someone who does what he does for any other class. Maybe you could say like Toofty for Demo Man, but I don't think there's anyone who does what he does
No,
for anything
I like
else.
Tufty, but his production quality is like nowhere near, and he hasn't been at it for as long either.
Well, I don't think his production quality is just different. I think that with Toofty, it's the issue is really that he's like like Uncle Dane, right, is a competitive player. For any of you who don't know, like he's played Highlander for a long time. He's also played sixes. Well, not he's played no restriction sixes, which is Valve competitive in
Yep.
RGL, and he was on Froyotech, and then he was on Ascent in the second season. And then but the I mean he was carried on but in on Froyo, but it doesn't really matter. But like he really cares about the game both, you know, competitively and casually, and he's, you know, he's got that like, all right, we're playing like when you play TF2, I feel like there's always been like a few different mindsets. Like for example, if you go back and watch like an old Muselk video, I think most players used to have like the mindset he had, like when like you're watching like a Try Hard Tuesday video where he's just like, okay,
Yep.
I'm just here to get like the biggest kill streak, you know, and that's what I'm doing, you know, trying to get a
Yep.
godlike. I'll let the other team cap just so I can get 20 kills, you know, I need more time or blah 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 or whatever. And then you had the people who are actually trying to win and like play with their team and stuff like that. And so I think TF2 indirectly, or I would argue very hard that TF2 lets you like it kind of forces people to play as a team even if they don't want to.
Yep.
But I think like their Uncle Dane's is more in like the camp of, you know, playing as a team and, you know, helping other people, and I don't think that like there's a lot of content out there for that, and that's what I'm trying to do. But we'll
Yeah.
see. But I think I would just wanted to. Here's my Uncle Dane appreciation post, I guess.
Got you. Hmm.
But I
Um.
mean that's how I got into TF2 though, in content creation. But I mean you're a streamer though. You're a popular
Yeah.
top five.
Yeah.
On, well, actually, when you stream, you're usually in like the top 5 to like 8. So
True.
how is it being a new streamer for TF2?
You know, yeah, it's there. I haven't been streaming super often recently, and I'm probably gonna stream tonight. Now that I think about it, I'm probably gonna do my controller only stream, so that's gonna happen hopefully, if I can get my controller working. But you know, there's some great things about the TF2 community, and there's some terrible things about the TF2 community. And I gotta say, when I started streaming, man, there were a lot of people that would see the TTV in my name and then start saying slurs. So I turned voice enable 0, and then now it's like the cheaters kind of suck too. So you know, there's ups and downs. But I will say, if I didn't enjoy streaming, I wouldn't still be doing it. Um, and there's some. I wish I kind of wrote down more about this because I lost my other document that we had from the first podcast because I had a lot more to say when I was still more fresh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I will say that I think it's a shame that when I switch from pubs to streaming competitive, my viewership drops by a lot. I think that TF2 competitive is super neglected already in the first place. A lot of people don't like it for various reasons. For I think most of them are not valid, but some of them have decent points. And I think that TF2 Twitch scene is really small too. And I think that, you know, I was thinking about this before when we were talking about Uncle Dane and maybe potential possible content updates. You know how easy it would be for Valve to contact somebody like, I don't know, like for example, I'll say Moist Critical, which I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Yeah,
He made a video about TF2's bot crisis during the whole Save TF2
yeah.
thing.
So did
So
Ludwig.
he's played TF2. You know how easy it would be for Valve to throw on a cosmetic that was for him and then pay him, I don't know, like $100,000 to make a video about it again and say, "Hey, I'm sponsored. Use my code," and then you know
Well,
he gets a cut or whatever.
the
And
you know
that would bring so many people to Steam.
Well, there's another thing there as well, though, is I feel there's one other person that has legacy with TF2 that has a cosmetic in the Steam community workshop about him and
The
has an
Jerma?
enormous Jerma. Jerma has
Yeah.
is one of the top streamers on Twitch. There's a cosmetic in the workshop right now where it's like it's like you make Scout into Jerma. And
Right.
it would be great if that was added and Jerma had like a stream where he's like cosplays as himself. That would be fucking hilarious. Like playing TF2
It
again.
would be.
That would be
And that would
amazing.
bring a lot of people to the platform, I'm sure,
Well,
because
with
it's
because
really
he has a
not
lot of
a
new
difficult game.
viewers, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it would be interesting for I think it would be an interesting stream for him because he'd have to explain like this is how he started. Like this, I mean, it's I think this is something that I think is like this is kind of shitty to say, but TF2's main export is good content creators. Like,
Yeah.
because
They
oh
all
my
leave.
god, like well, like I mean maybe not leave, but I think they just get burnt out of just doing
No,
TF2.
no, well, I don't blame them too, that's the
Yeah,
thing, I mean,
there's money in other games. That's the thing.
exactly. I would've done the same thing if I were in Muselk's spot, I think. I don't think I'd ever be able to stop myself from playing this game, but I don't know if I would. I think it would continue making
I
TF2 content,
I
but,
think
then again, I haven't been doing it for a decade, so
yeah. Well, the thing is with Muselk is that I think for him the issue was like the content like what he makes had run dry. Because like for me, I've got like 100 video ideas basically. But the problem is like I like to have like a really like heavily edited video, and the issue is like it's just not like in the I probably won't even make like a tenth of them. I probably want in like the next, you know, 5 years. You know what I mean? You know, so I've still got ideas and stuff that I want to do. But for Muselk, like he uploaded a video almost every day for like 4, 5 plus years. And so, and all of his content, like no offense, was mostly the same. There was some scripted stuff, like for him complaining about like the community doing like really stupid things and him talking about like his best loadout videos, which were pretty good. But almost everything else was like unscripted, you know, like kind of highlight style videos of him in like
right.
pubs. And that, like, you can only do that for so long, you know, before, because like, was the content like as a content creator looking back, like, do I still enjoy those videos? Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure, but the content was stale. Like, and him moving to a different game just makes sense. But
Yeah.
I would love to see him come back. But
And he has a few times, but not
yeah,
it's
on his
more of
second
like a,
channel.
"Hi, TF2, I still love you guys,
Yeah,
bye,"
absolutely.
type of
Yeah,
deal,
and
as
that's
opposed
not
to,
like
you know
he does in not for him, but both from like him, Jerma, and Star, especially because those were like the big three back in the day. Was like they we do not owe them anything, and they do not owe us anything because that you know that's I think the trap that kind of people get caught in is like they either feel like they owe the community something when realistically you made content for them and they chose to consume. And the like it feels
Right.
like some people either feel they owe the community or the community feels like they owe that YouTuber. And then on the other end you have people who feel entitled over the community and vice versa. And that's
Yep.
I usually see that from both sides where very often what I used to see is and I haven't seen this a lot recently because I think this has happened to so many creators that tried to switch games like Muselk did and failed, where they were like, okay, I'm not making you, I don't want to make TF2 YouTube videos anymore. I want to make like Fortnite videos, and they tell their subscribers, oh, can you go watch this new video from Fortnite or whatever, or CS:GO or
Yep.
whatever. But that's like not like that's not the game that people are interested in. And either
Yep.
A, the viewership is really low and they complain, or and then so maybe they complain about it, and then so now they're like, okay, then the viewers go and watch that new video, and they're like, yeah, I didn't really like this or whatever, and now that YouTuber will complain that they got a lot of negative comments or whatever, or they're like people saying that they didn't really care for it, and it's just like they don't owe you anything, and you don't owe them anything. If you want to switch games, go for it, but you can't expect your viewership to change over. And there are people that I would love to see do other games. Like I used to watch Uncle Dane stream back in the day, and one thing that he used to stream and he knows a lot about is Pokemon. And I know that, you know, I like Uncle Dane would probably make great Pokemon content. However, I'm sure that there are a lot of people who watch him in TF2 and love him for what he does in TF2 that just don't give a shit about Pokemon and won't watch. And
Yep.
so, or maybe they do and they just watch because he has good editing. And, you know, like Funk, right? I love movement shooters, and he made a video on Pokemon as well. And I am sure people watch those videos just because it's Funk. So maybe, you know, that's like the catch. But I think if you start making like daily upload videos, kind of like,
Yeah.
Muselk or like the other people, like back in the day, I think Pyro Joe used to daily upload. Spiky Mikey, I think, used to daily upload. Kind of stuff like that, where it is, I can't like say low effort because it might be extremely high effort, but like you just don't take the time to spit
Compared
things
compared
out and
to compared to something like Uncle Dane, it's easier to produce a lot of.
yes,
Like
exactly.
it's not necessarily that they don't try. It's just that it's not as high like
Production
production
value.
time, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. So
I think yeah, and I think the best way to handle departing from TF2 or moving on to different games is just to start a second channel and then advertise it a little bit. But then again, that's also harder in some cases, like to do. So I don't know.
yeah, I think there are two kind of ways that you can do it. Um, there's the Muselk way, where you kind of take literally all the videos that you made on the old game and shove into a playlist, which is actually great, by the way. I playlists are super underutilized on YouTube, in my opinion.
Mhm.
At Jolts Dude, making every single like series that he does in a playlist, it makes it super easy to binge. It's
Yep,
fantastic.
I love Jolts, dude.
Um, but and then the other take is like recently with Uncle Dane in his Q&A saying if he was gonna make content for another game or whatever, he would just make another channel. And I think those are one of the two ways to go. Um, I don't think just not putting your stuff into a playlist, or like if you make your old subscribers or whatever, you force them to go like have to scroll past. Like imagine if Muselk didn't put his TF2 videos into a playlist. You have to scroll back thousands of videos just to find like his TF2 stuff. And that
Yep.
would be insane because you have to go past all the last 3 whatever years of Fortnite. Then you have to scroll past like the year or two of like Overwatch, and then you get to TF2. And so like it just depends on what type of content creator you are, but I think one of those two ways is like the way to do it.
Yep. Uh, yeah, I think I don't know. What do you have a segue or anything else to say?
So speaking of content, um so we were talking about, content creation and being a streamer and like TF2 updates. And so one thing I want to talk about now is, since, we're kind of on that topic, since I'll be making a video about it not too awful long from now. I'm going to wait till after I move to kind of really get started on this, which
Yeah.
is this past season of Sixes. We were on the
Oh,
Engie
right.
Sixes team. Oh, were you trying to segue into something else?
No, no, I wasn't. No, I just was like, I don't know what do you want to talk about next.
Okay, yeah, I
Just,
have these kind
I
of
was
in
just saying
order.
right because I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
perfect.
So this past season, so obviously we played this season. I played engineer full time, with a little bit of an asterisk there, because like on certain maps, some mids you just can't play engineer, or heavy or really anything like that. Like I know like heavy to mid, for example, a lot of you have probably heard is like very strong, but it's very dependent. Again, there's a lot of misinformation about competitive out there, both from like your casual like TF2, like your casual TF2 comment, YouTube commenter, redditor, but also from like TF2 content creators. Because one of the most popular videos, I'm not gonna like call anyone out here, but one of the most popular videos about competitive TF2 is and talks about like items, is made
And why
by
they're banned.
someone who is not like in Sixes, made by someone who's not a Sixes player, and they're like a Highlander
Yeah.
player, and it's like you don't know what you're talking about.
All I'm gonna add to the whole misconceptions about competitive based off of YouTube is the fact that there are the majority of people who create content for TF2 YouTube do not play the game competitively at all, or B, have played the game competitively for maybe like one season, which translates to about like a third or quarter of the year, depending on how much you scrim.
Yeah,
Those people, while I do think that is, maybe not all of them are bad content creators, and maybe not all of them are bad players, should not be making videos about competitive if they do not have if they have no experience or little to no experience, because those people who try to argue about how things should be balanced maybe don't fully understand how it works in competitive and are only looking at it from a casual standpoint,
yeah,
if that makes sense.
yeah.
And I
I
don't want to
absolutely
I don't
agree.
want to name
And
drop or anything,
yeah,
but
yeah,
there
yeah.
are certain content creators who are guilty of saying things that are just not true about the competitive scene, or making claims that are outdated or ridiculous, or both. and we're trying to argue that basically competitive is unhealthy for the game. And I would counter back with competitive scenes for games are almost never going to be bad for them because
Yeah,
again, people who play TF2 competitively, sure, maybe they're not fun to play against for you if you only want to, dance in a corner, or if you want to be the top scoring player and not get stomped by the competitive soldier with 10,000 hours and no hats on the original and gunboats. Maybe you don't like them in that way, but at the end of the day, we're still people who
enjoy the game.
love the game,
Yeah,
maybe
well,
for different reasons, but again, it's keeping TF2 alive. So
I think one of the things is like, as a side note here, is that when I thought about this recently, and I was like, okay, who are the most dedicated people to TF2? And this is gonna be super controversial, I'm sure, but
sure.
the answer is, I would say, the admins of competitive leagues, the RGL, E2F2L, UGC admins. Because unlike anyone else, like the mappers, right? I would say the mappers are fucking amazing, right? Like the mappers and the content creators and all that, who are the only people who do not make money from what they do, and it's the admins. Everyone
Well,
else makes
depending
money.
on what type of mapper you are, you can.
Well, yeah, if you only make competitive sixes maps, it's possible that they won't get into the game. But most mappers, like, their goal is to get their map into the game.
Yeah.
And if they do, they make money. If you make cosmetics, you make money. If you make content on
If they
YouTube
get,
and it
yeah.
takes off, you make money. Whereas if you're an admin, I mean, there is no league now, or really in the past, because I don't think ESEA like actually had like people from the community as admins. Like, there was no money in it. There's no money in being admin. The only reason you are an admin is because you care, and that's it. Like,
Or maybe you want to abuse it, would be a more
maybe that too.
cynical
Yeah, that too. That
viewpoint.
too. Or you want to abuse it like an asshole. Yeah, it's one of the two. And you don't get paid. There's basically no payoff.
A
And
lot of people really don't like you.
yeah, and a lot of people don't like you just because. And
Yeah.
so it's like the shitty job that no one wants to
And,
do,
I-
but
and
like,
I think
yeah,
that's true for most competitive players for TF2 as well, because unless you're top invite, you're not going to be making money off of the game unless you manage to win the season. And even then,
which is
the amount
difficult.
of time that you put in, it was like very much smaller than minimum wage. Even for invite, it's probably the amount of time put in versus the amount of money made is
Yeah.
definitely less than minimum wage.
Oh,
And you have to
significantly.
keep in mind, competitive players are not born; they're made. Like I didn't start this game going, yeah, I want to get really good at Soldier and start playing competitive. That's not what happened. I started this game just like anybody else. I was like, oh, this game looks fun. I've seen people play it on YouTube. It's free. I have a computer that can run it, and I played it and I enjoyed it and I enjoyed it. And then I eventually said, wow, I'm getting pretty good at this game, and I want to keep playing. Maybe I should not get bored of casual and go do something else. And that's how I
Yeah.
got into competitive. So
Yeah. And I think with that leading into that, like, that is kind of I mean, that's kind of how I got into competitive. But I think the only issue that I have is like this is there are a lot of stigmas about competitive TF2, and most of I would say that most of them are false, but there are some that are true. Um, where like one with this season, right, with engine full-time Engie and sixes, so like people seem to think that no other class is run, like, besides like the meta, like the two soldiers, two scouts, and like
medic
medic and
demo.
demo man. But the thing is like, you should see either one or both of an engineer and heavy every single round of
And
sixes,
pyro.
and
And
pyro.
pyro.
Well, maybe pyro, but no, every round. I'm saying literally every round. If the team is playing optimally, you should see an engineer
Yeah.
every single round. But the thing is, the problem is that it's not what the problem is more of that you don't see them all the time. And I think that's the issue that people have, where, because right now, like, engineer is so insanely good for holding last, because after you get a level 2 or level 3 up, you literally don't need to watch it anymore. Like, if it gets destroyed, you, like, when the other team pushes into last with Uber, you just sit in spawn. Like, if you're playing meta, you sit in spawn. As soon as it's destroyed, you just switch back to scout or pyro or heavy or whatever, and then you come out of spawn as that other class. And it is the best way to hold last in sixes.
It's like a seventh player because it has a lot of
Yes,
HP, and if you don't kill it, it's gonna
it's
screw your team over. So
exactly.
you have to spend resources to kill it, and the engineer loses nothing because he just switches off to a different class.
Exactly. And engineer is insanely good in that, right? But but the thing is like, because of that, the only issue that I think people do not realize and don't talk about, and this happens in Highlander as well, which is more of, in competitive, the issue is more of not that classes are not played, it's that there is a stigma around certain classes being played, where the issue is not like, okay, these things are never played, but it's more of, if you use this class for more than like a minute, people are going to start to complain.
They're going to
And
complain, and they're not going to want to scrim against you again. And it's
exactly.
really important in a competitive environment to get practice in, because if you don't practice and you only go into your matches completely blind, you're going to have issues that your team could have worked out when you practiced that you weren't able to fix, and you're going to do worse, generally speaking, than a team that does practice. So
Yeah,
it's really
exactly.
important, especially in such a small competitive scene, to be able to practice as much as possible and get good practice. Like, it's one thing if you're rolling the other team or you're getting stomped by a team way better than you. That's not really good practice unless you're putting in extra time to like look at the demo and see what went wrong.
Yeah.
So it's more difficult to run an off class full time because people will get upset at you. People won't want to play against you again. You will literally develop. You will be known by players who you have no idea who they are, just because you run a certain class that's not meta
Yeah,
all
and
the time.
that happened to us this season, where in sixes, so we obviously, I was saying, we're the Engie team, and people knew who I was when I messaged them for scrims, and I had never messaged them before, ever. Or like or casters knowing who we are before we played, or whatever, or like us watching like just a random Twitch stream and there's people talking about us. And it's just like, I was like, we've never interacted with these people, and or whatever. And it's interesting because there's also the flip side to this, where the only teams we only lost twice, or to two teams in our entire season. And one was because we just were down a player. We were down our pocket soldier, and we had to ring a scout player, and he had to switch. He just didn't know his role. That he didn't know the pocket soldier role, and he wasn't a great soldier player. But I do not blame him for that. That's not his fault. We just had to get a ringer to play at all, and we still lost. It was actually an amazement that we got 2 rounds. However, but the other team that beat us was one of the few teams that scrimmed us, and it's not really a surprise that the teams that did not scrim us, like, honestly kind of got rolled by us in our, like, I mean, we won a
Yeah,
lot of our matches 5-0, or 4-0,
yeah, that's
because
really the reason I think why people get upset too. Because I think objectively in sixes on most maps, engineer full time is it going to be objectively worse than scout if you're a good scout, because he's so much more slow paced than scout.
yeah,
But the thing is, you need to, in order to like make it objectively worse, the other team has to make you play fast, right?
exactly.
If they let your engineer get set up with his mini sentry, or God forbid, his level 3 and a level 3 teleporter and a dispenser, it's going to be a nightmare for you to make any ground, and they're going to be able to make aggressive plays to try to gain an advantage, like kill your medic, kill your demo, and you don't want that to happen. So you need to understand, like on the mid fight, if they have an engineer, then you need to do something fast, because you don't want them to win the mid fight and then you can't make any ground and they won't lose any ground, and they only have time to just poke and prod your defenses, right? Like that's what you can't allow them to do. And the biggest counter to us, for example, was product, which if you're not familiar, it's the King of the Hill map, and it's just Viaduct but slightly different. The biggest counter was both of the other team just having both of their soldiers bomb at us
Instantly on
right at the
mid.
start of the mid, and everybody just walked forward and bought it at us, because if they gave us time, our engineer would get his level 1 or his mini sentry set up, and he would be able to deny the bombs with both the mini sentry and his shotgun, and they would not be able to play an aggressive mid. And then after that, he can build a dispenser and yada yada yada. So
Yeah,
it's
and I feel like I'm excited for the video because there's a lot of, I mean, obviously people don't really know sixes in general, but even sixes players, I don't think realize like some of the power engineer can have, not just like in literal damage, but in like his abilities. Because I feel like when, like, for example, when we were played, so as a side note, I mentor a newcomer, or I mentored, and I have before also as well mentored newcomer teams, and we played our newcomer team because they just asked for like a normal scrim. And for those of you who don't know, I'm not great at scout. I'm actually pretty bad. I'm pretty sure I got fucking diffed on the flank when we played them. But when we played without, or like when we played the mids where I played scout and I didn't die, and like we rolled like them to like like we took second immediately or whatever. There were a lot of moments where I realized, or I thought, I was like, man, it would be a lot better if I was engineer right now. And I think it's because I was able to experiment with other classes because of our team that I realized, like, and I left this in a comment where they were asking like how, and this is the best comment I've ever gotten. It was on my my frag video that I just released. The best comment I've ever like had on any of my videos, which was him asking them as a non-competitive player, asking like kind of how it works and how I'm able to contribute to the team without like just being a huge liability. And people just super underestimate one, obviously the sentry gun is like the most common thing. Like area denial in TF2 is extremely good. It just is, both in casual and competitive. And but the thing is people super underrate both the dispenser and the teleporter. I would say like teleporters, like if you can get a teleporter up on 5 CP, holy shit, your team just has power. Because us with like level 3, we were able to double sack so easily and not have to lose like second off
Yeah.
of it. Like
And
especially
teams
in the
would
last.
underestimate how quickly our players were going to get back, push out, and then all of a sudden it's a fair 6v6 because our players took the
And
teleporter,
or it's not even
and then
not,
we
or
have
it's
positional advantage.
or it's a not even fair for them, because not only do we have positional advantage, more importantly, we also have crit heals, or our soldiers who
And a
sack,
dispenser and crit heals, exactly.
and a
Yep.
mini
That,
sentry. Yeah. And so
yeah.
like it, and traps and all that. So
And like I said, I think here's going to be kind of my final take on the subject because I don't want to talk about everything that there's to
yeah.
talk about to take away from your video eventually. And also, we're reaching an hour mark, so I'm guessing we want to wrap up soon. But here's my take. I think that in lower divisions, so we played an amateur, really not the most impressive division, not all the greatest players, a lot of new players. I think from newcomer to like IM and maybe like low main, you can get away if you're like, okay, here's what I say. If you are a casual player who does not play a sixes class, but does not want to play Highlander because sniper makes it not fun, and it's just too much going on at once, I will say you should be, if you play Pyro, if you play Engineer, heck, even if you play Sniper and are really good, I'd say go for it. Try to make a team yourself. You might have a hard time joining a team if they understand that you want to play a full-time Pyro or off class, right? But I say go for it because maybe it's objectively worse than having a scout or a soldier. And if you, don't take the place of your demo, by the way, or your medic. You can't do that. You have to be either a scout or a soldier because you can't lose medic or demo. But I'd say go for it because a lot of the people who play in like amateur or newcomer are going to be mentored by somebody who's explaining to them how to win versus a team that has a typical lineup and that plays typically, right?
Yeah.
So if you all of a sudden change things up like what we did, we have an engineer. Now all of a sudden, sure, engineer is objectively worse, but you have to adapt to that. You can't just play how you would play against a team with a flank scout. So I say go for it, and honestly, like, don't be afraid to be kind of not liked by people for playing an off class, because at the end of the day, if you're enjoying it, that's what matters, and if your team is having fun and your team is improving, that's really the important thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think I wanted to talk about this earlier, and I'm going to talk about it for a minute, which is and I'll probably talk about this in the video as well, which is like I'm not a fan of Highlander. But the main issue with Highlander, and this was an issue in sixes when I was talking about like being an off class and like Engie being on last, is that a lot of classes, like even if they don't need to be, they get kind of pigeonholed into these shitty roles. And this happens more in Highlander than anything else. Where instead of like the Pyro in Highlander, I would say has the worst role of any class in any game mode in the entire game. Because as Pyro in Highlander, you don't kill people. You don't do damage. You don't, do anything like super notable unless you're technically throwing. Your
No, I
only
think I
job, unless
disagree.
you your
I think
only
Pyro can
job,
take offensive Ubers. Pyro can
maybe,
be a DPS class on King of the
but your
Hill.
main,
On payload, you're basically.
yeah, your
I
main
would agree with what
job,
you said if you're talking about payload, but King
your
of the Hill,
main job is to deny Ubers, which is, you're babysitting. You're just air blasting Ubers. You're making sure your medic doesn't die to spies, and you're denying bombers, which is just, so most of your job is just air blast and making sure that your teammates don't die. And it's just like, it's not a fun way to play because most of the time you're just kind of sitting around waiting for the other team to do stuff, even if you're playing offensively. And yeah, you can kind of spam your detonator because Scorch Shot is banned in Highlander, not sixes. But it's not a fun way to play, and you kind of get pigeonholed in. And that's an issue that kind of can happen in sixes with the with these like the stigma of that. But as soon as you change it, and especially if a team doesn't adapt, you can really just annihilate other teams that don't know what to do. And
Yep.
that's something I'll definitely talk about in the video. And I hope that I hope it encourages people who play these off classes. Obviously, honestly, if you're just a spy player, I'm just sorry. I'm sorry if you're a spy main.
It's really
Like
not. I mean,
he
it's possible. It's possible, but it's not going to get you as far as
you,
like Pyro or Engie or
you're
stuff.
not going to be able to play. I don't think that spy would be viable. Like even what we were doing, like full-time spy and sixes just wouldn't work unless you're like an ambassador headshot like god.
Yeah.
It's gonna be nearly impossible because your team's gonna be
Revolver
fighting
wouldn't be too bad either.
your team's gonna be fighting a 5v6 the majority of the time, which is the
I think
problem.
Spy's good in sixes, but again, it has to be unexpected. So if they know
Yes,
about you, you're gonna have a hard time.
exactly.
After like 5 minutes of the game, they're gonna be constantly spyware, and you're gonna have to
Yeah.
rely on your revolver. And at that point, you're basically just like a glorified like scout who can go invis.
Yeah, and the other
You
thing
you can't do
there
much damage.
is in Highlander, I think it's really interesting though because Highlander spy can also be vastly different from casual spy because
Oh, Highlander Spy, you have like three different playstyles. You have like actually going for
in
stabs.
in the
You
best
have going for guns, and then you have the observer who just sits
and
there and
and
does
the
nothing but calm.
and the best one is the observer as well, where you just
I mean, I'd say the combination of the three is better. Like it's
yes, but the if you talk to like the top invite teams like K and D, like
yeah.
literally all like I think Demento, from my understanding, literally all he does, like he is like the pseudo main caller for the team,
Yeah, he
where he
calls where
just
the combo is and stuff, and then when they're actually when something is happening, then you go for either a decloak for a stab, or then you go for revolver. Because
yeah
if you go in by yourself, you're gonna get caught out 9 times out of 10,
yeah
and you're a lot more useful to your team alive and being a little rat cloaked in a corner calling stuff than you are dead after going for backstab the 10th
yeah,
time in a row.
and as a lot of things, in just TF2 in general, this is a lot of this is map dependent as well. Like right now, there's a stream Kritzcraft is doing, and they're on Steel. And Spy is probably the most powerful on Steel. Because
Yep,
knowing
yep.
what the other team is doing at all times is really, 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 really good. Whereas, say, on Koth, it's not as important because you kind of have an idea of what every team is going to do at all times.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, I think that's about it. There's other things that are written down, but for me, we're at an hour and 7 minutes, so I think that is kind of where I want to wrap things up. Is there anything last things you want to say?
Uh, in the off chance that this does get a lot of views, go follow me on YouTube and Twitch. Twitch TV/Scary Broccoli. If it doesn't get views, still go follow me. I guess.
Yeah, go watch the
Just
Queequeg exposed video or the Roamer video, I guess. I'll link his channel in the description of the video. And then but yeah, this will go up on the main channel. I'm trying to I think I have an idea for the name of the podcast. Just need to kind of come up with a thumbnail for each one, and then we'll kind of be good to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it. I'm gonna try to upload these maybe once every maybe I upload a video like a full video like the Bison video like I just did, and then follow it up with a podcast like a week or two later, or maybe every other video I'll do something like that. But
I just want to throw out my idea on recording for the name of the podcast. I think it should be called the Gas Passers.
gas passers.
Yeah,
I
that's what I want. That's my vote.
I was telling him earlier that the the name of the podcast will probably be synesthesia because the new
It's
the
hard to spell.
yeah, it is, but the I would have called it Soundwave or audio, well, like I would call it like one of the audiophile unusual effects that were just added, but the problem is audiophile is people aren't gonna realize, and then Soundwave already exists because of that's the name of Marcus Brownlee's podcast, and that just leaves synesthesia, which probably isn't the best for algorithm, the like because it's gonna be hard to search and all that, but we'll see. Hopefully we can have I'm hopefully gonna have like other people on later on. There's a lot of people I'd like to have and just talk to and kind of shoot the shit, but yeah, that's it. So have a good night, everyone.
Peace out, guys.